Hey guys, tonight we slip into soft leather boots and walk carefully across damp Tudor cobblestones, not to court, not to church, but toward the kind of quiet job no one wants to admit exists. Executioner. You'll wake in a modest room above the cooper's shop. Wash your face in a bowl of water that smells faintly of ash, and start your day by sharpening the axe. And no, you probably won't survive this. Not socially, at least. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me where you're listening from, and what time it is there. I love knowing where these sleepy little trips are landing. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake before the sun, as usual. Not out of discipline, out of necessity. There's something about being the one who swings the axe that makes it harder to sleep deeply. You hear things in the night. Boots echoing on wet stone, dogs barking 2 streets over. Your own breath sounding unfamiliar in the quiet. You rise, careful not to bump the bench where your tools rest. There's a specific sound they make when disturbed. Hollow. Final. You throw on your tunic, finger the thin tear in the hem, then kneel to check the edge of the blade. You sharpen it more than it needs, not because you're worried it's dull, because it's something to do with your hands. The edge catches the candlelight, like it always does. Bright, cold, and honest. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners in Tudor England were rarely full-time professionals. Many had other trades. Butchers, barbers, blacksmiths. You started as a woodcutter. Less metaphorical than it sounds. But you were steady, clean. And when the town's last hangman ran off to join the sea trade, they remembered your hands. You warm your fingers by the hearth, such as it is, more ember than flame. Your breakfast is bread, cheese, and a boiled egg if the neighbors didn't take all the good ones from the market. You sit on the stool near the window and write today's name into the ledger. Small, neat script. The page is already smudged from the last entry. You'll fix it later. Or not. Today's name is Thomas Underlay. Theft and assault. Or maybe just the theft. The stories change depending on who's telling them. His execution is scheduled for just after mid-bell. That gives you time to prep the site, check the platform, and try not to think about what it means to be so trusted with endings. You sling the axe across your back, wrapped in cloth, not because you're embarrassed, but because it rattles otherwise. And that sound draws attention you're never in the mood for. Downstairs, you nod to the cooper's wife. She doesn't nod back. She hasn't in 3 months. You walk the narrow streets, avoiding puddles with the skill of long habit. A baker's boy runs past, flour on his sleeves, and doesn't look at you. No one does. And yet everyone does. You pass a church. You don't go in. You reach the square before the crowd. The platform is still here, 4 boards, reinforced last summer, slightly warped on one side. You test the steps. One creaks, but holds. You brush off leaves with your sleeve, then pause to wipe down the block itself. It's stained. Of course it is. but you wipe it anyway. You sit nearby with a cloth and start cleaning the axe. The blade is already sharp. You sharpen it anyway. You don't think about Thomas. You don't think about last week's name, or the one before that. You think about the weather, about whether the butcher still sells the peppered lamb, about the way people look at you like you're carrying a sickness they might catch by accident. Quirky tidbit. Executioners were often socially isolated. Their trade was needed, but feared. Many couldn't sit in taverns. Some weren't allowed to be buried in hallowed ground. And yet, they were paid from public funds, invited to royal courts, and sometimes offered gifts for clean work. Historians still argue whether they were necessary monsters or simply forgotten craftsmen. You hear the bells begin. The mid-bell stretch. People start to gather. You stand. You unwrap the axe. And you wait. Because that's part of the job too. Waiting. And pretending that this is just another kind of labor. The crowd gathers like fog, slow at first, then suddenly there, all around you. Boots scraping on stone, murmurs weaving through the square like threads pulled too tight. You stand off to the side, hands folded behind your back, axe laid across the block. You don't look at them. You never do. You know they're looking at you. Children on tiptoe, old men with furrowed brows, the baker's daughter pretending not to stare, the town reeve in his stiff hat and borrowed sense of authority, and somewhere, always, someone making bets on how cleanly it'll go. They don't remember your name, only what you do. You adjust the angle of the block. It rocks slightly on the left leg, still not fixed from that winter when the carpenter's son took ill. You wedge a scrap of leather beneath it. Good enough. There's a small delay. The condemned man hasn't arrived yet. You lean against the post. Let your eyes wander. The square smells like mud, onions, and something faintly burning. Always something burning. Maybe someone's fire got ahead of itself this morning. The boy from the scribe's office walks by, with a rolled parchment under his arm. He sees you, nods, then keeps walking faster. You almost smile. Almost. Mainstream historical fact. Public executions in Tudor England were as much civic ritual as punishment. They were held in market squares or near city gates, often on market days for maximum visibility, meant to remind everyone what justice looked like: sharp, sudden, and publicly funded. Finally, a stir. You straighten. The guards arrive, followed by a man in shackles walking too upright to be scared. His hair is neatly combed. His tunic is cleaner than yours. He has the look of someone who's decided how this will go, and refuses to entertain alternatives. You recognize him, everyone does. Thomas Underlay. He ran the grain store before it burned down. They say he stole flour from the Lord's tithe barn. Others say he struck a soldier. Others say he wouldn't kneel when the local magistrate passed by on his horse. You never get the full story. You don't ask any more. Thomas climbs the steps with only a slight stumble. The reeve reads the charges, but no one really listens. Everyone already decided what they believe. You lift the axe once. Light, just to check the swing. Not dramatic. Just a habit. A final rehearsal. You meet Thomas's eyes. He nods. That part never gets easier. You offer the blindfold. He shakes his head. He kneels. You place your hand lightly on his back, a silent warning. He breathes deep. You raise the axe. You don't think. You swing. And when it's done, you step back. Someone claps once. Then silence. Then murmurs again, soft like ripples around a thrown stone. You wipe the blade clean with a cloth already red from 3 weeks ago. You roll your shoulder. It twinges, the platform creaks as you walk down. Quirky tidbit. Some executioners were judged not just by efficiency, but by style. A clean stroke earned applause. A botched one could start a riot or end a career. There are recorded accounts of executioners being booed, pelted, even chased out of towns after a particularly messy display. Historians still argue whether that pressure refined the craft or just broke the men inside it. You carry the axe in both hands now, cloth over the blade again. You don't look back. You pass the tavern. You pass the cooper's shop. You pass the butcher who still won't meet your eyes. At home, you set the axe in its cradle. Wipe the handle. Stretch your hands. There's no applause here. No judgment either. Just silence. The kind that hums in your ears long after the crowd has gone. You sit at the table and write the name in your ledger. Thomas Underlay. Clean. Swift. Refused blindfold. No final words. You draw a line under his name. Not to forget. Just to mark the end. You eat a small meal. Bread mostly. A bit of cold meat. You don't taste it. You check the tools again. You oil the hinge on the carrying case. You sweep the floor. You do what you can to feel like a tradesman, like a man with calluses, not ghosts. Then you lie on your cot, stare at the beam above your head, and try not to remember what it felt like when he looked at you and didn't blink. You wake with a stiff neck and the faintest scent of oil still clinging to your hands. The ledger lies open on the table, a half-written line trailing off near the bottom of the page. You must have fallen asleep mid-thought again. You don't remember what the thought was. Probably something about balance, or splinters, or silence. You swing your legs over the side of the cot and stretch until your spine offers a chorus of clicks. Morning light filters through the window's oiled cloth covering, a patchy sort of sunlight, like the day isn't sure it wants to commit to being pleasant. You check the tools. Still there. You check your hands. Still steady. Outside, the street sounds less tense than yesterday. Maybe because the execution is done. Maybe because the crowd saw what it needed to. You've learned not to guess what people carry with them. Today's list is empty, which doesn't mean there's nothing to do. You're behind on repairs. Your hood is fraying at the edge again, even if you never wear it. The blade case has a split along the top seam, and the platform boards, the ones no one else ever thinks about, are beginning to warp in the corners. You'll fix what you can. You always do. You sit by the hearth with a bit of thread and begin sewing the hood. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners' hoods weren't a daily staple. In England, especially during the Tudor period, anonymity wasn't always expected. or possible. Hoods were more likely used during high-profile or political executions, where fear or ceremony required distance. Most of the time, the crowd knew exactly who was swinging the blade. You mend it anyway, not because you need to wear it, but because it reminds people to keep their distance. You eat a bit of bread, dip it in broth made from last week's bones. It's not terrible, it's just enough. Someone knocks at your door. You tense before you even stand. It's the almoner. You exhale, open the door. He smiles, thin but real. Brought you something, he says, holding out a small cloth-wrapped bundle. Inside, 2 apples and a small round of cheese. Surplus from the abbey, he says. You know how they overcook for the faithful. You raise an eyebrow. A surplus of apples. He shrugs. A pious mistake. You thank him. He doesn't linger. He never does. But he speaks to you like a person. One of the few who does. Quirky tidbit. Almoners were responsible for distributing alms, charity, from churches and abbeys to the poor and the sick. But they also acted, unofficially, as a bridge between the untouchables and the holy. Executioners, considered ritually unclean by some, were often visited in private. Some almoners even offered them last rites in secret. You eat 1 apple immediately. It's soft, but sweet. You save the second for tomorrow. The rest of the day is spent checking bindings, rehemming your tunic, and reinforcing the axe handle with another layer of wax. You polish the blade, even though there's no work for it. It gleams like it's proud of you. Later, you walk down to the river, not to bathe, just to think. You sit on a stone near the water's edge and watch it move, steady, stubborn, uncaring. There's comfort in that. You see a boy skipping stones. He glances at you, then looks away fast, like he's been caught stealing. You nod once. He doesn't nod back. You understand. You return home at dusk, your boots caked in clay. You wash them carefully before stepping inside. Some rituals aren't holy, just necessary. You light a candle and sit by the window. The hood is folded neatly beside you, mended, unused. You write 1 line in your diary. Nothing today. The kind of nothing that weighs more than most somethings. You stare at the candle for a while, letting its flicker match your breath. Then you lie down, eyes open to the shadows on the ceiling, and wonder, not for the first time, whether the axe remembers the faces better than you do. You wake to rain. Not a storm, just that slow, persistent kind that makes the air feel heavier and the wood swell in the floorboards. You can already hear the drips finding their favorite leak in the corner of the roof. You make a mental note to patch it again, even though you know you won't. You sit up. The fire is out. The hearth is damp. The blade, resting in its cradle near the bench, glistens with a thin bead of condensation. You wipe it with your sleeve before it notices. There's no name today other, no list, no knock at the door. Just the weather, the tools, and a long, unspoken invitation to think. You don't want to take it. Instead, you sit and run your fingers along the axe's edge. Not enough to draw blood, just enough to feel the honesty of it. It doesn't lie. It never does. You appreciate that. You step outside, hood up, cloak drawn, walking slow through the sleepy streets. The baker waves today. You blink. That's new. You pass the square. Empty. Just puddles and echoes. You stand at the base of the scaffold and look up. It always seems smaller when no one's watching. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners were often responsible for maintaining the scaffold themselves, repairing the steps, clearing the blood, replacing warped boards. Towns rarely funded upkeep unless something broke during a spectacle. No one liked to spend money on what they'd rather not see. You pull a small knife from your belt and wedge out a splinter from the rail. You run your hand over the wood, checking for soft spots. You knock once, gently. The echo is hollow, but strong. You wonder who built it originally. You've never asked. You've just kept it standing. The rest of the morning disappears into the rhythm of small tasks. You oil the hinges of the storage chest. You sharpen a backup blade that you haven't used in 3 years. You restitch the handle of your apprentice's tool bag, even though he hasn't shown up in a week. Quirky tidbit. Some executioners kept apprentices, usually orphans, debtors, or distant relations. They were taught how to clean, maintain tools, read lists, and eventually perform executions. Very few stayed. Many left before they were ever given a name to carry. You take a walk around the town wall at midday. The guards don't nod, but they don't stop you either. You count bricks as you go. It keeps your mind from wandering. At the edge of town, near the market square, you hear singing. A woman selling ribbons, humming a tune older than the cobblestones. You pause. She meets your eyes, just for a moment, then looks away. You keep walking. At home, you light the fire. Peel an apple. The second one. The one you saved. It's softer now, but still good. You carve a small wedge from it, press it onto a piece of bread, and chew slowly. The taste is simple, honest, like the axe. You sit at the table and open the diary again. The parchment smells faintly of smoke and ink. You write. Rained today. Fix the block. No visitors. The apple was still sweet. Then you pause. You draw a small line beneath it. Not a signature, just a mark. The sky outside darkens early. The fire hisses as another drop finds its way through the roof. You lie on your cot and pull the blanket higher. You listen to the rain trace paths across old shingles. You close your eyes and let it blur the line between guilt and rest. Because today, no one looked at you with fear. No one needed you. And that, somehow, feels heavier than a name on a list. You won't remember all of it tomorrow. You wake to the smell of damp wool and something cooking next door. Probably beans or cabbage or some combination that no one really likes, but everyone eats anyway. The rain has stopped. The morning light cuts through the slats in thin bars, like the sun is testing the idea of shining, but doesn't want to commit. You sit up and stretch slowly, hands brushing the low beams overhead. Your knees ache a little more today. You take it as a sign to move slowly, as if the universe whispered, "No rush. There's always something to dread tomorrow." You dress without thinking. Tunic, belt, cloak. You check the axe again. Not because you need to use it, but because it's become a ritual. You like how it sits there, wrapped, silent. You like knowing where it is. There's no name today, but there is a letter, slipped under your door, folded 3 times, sealed with wax that bears no crest, just a pressed thumb. You break it open. Simple parchment, simple words. Come to the west gate before second bell. Quietly, you read it twice, then a third time, in case it changes. It doesn't. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners were sometimes asked to perform tasks unofficially, retrieving bodies, burying plague dead, or delivering messages that required plausible deniability. They were, after all, already tainted. One more secret didn't stain much. You tuck the letter into your sleeve, tuck your blade under your cloak, and step outside. The streets are quieter than usual. The rain has washed the smells away, mostly. You catch a whiff of yeast from the bakery and something burned from the smith's chimney. The usual ghosts. At the west gate, there's a man in a travel cloak, hood pulled low. He stands like someone used to giving orders, but pretending not to. He nods once when you approach. You know the priory by the road to Chelmsford. You nod. There's a matter needs handling. Tonight, quietly. You say nothing. He continues. They'll bring the cart around dusk. What's inside doesn't need to be seen by anyone but you. You raise an eyebrow. He adds you'll be paid. Of course. Quirky tidbit. In some towns, executioners were given unofficial side work by magistrates, churchmen, or even rival nobles, disposing of heretical texts, silencing inconvenient witnesses, or ensuring certain deaths remained unrecorded. Historians still argue whether these duties were abuses of power or simply extensions of a grim utility. You nod once. He leaves faster than he arrived. You go home. You eat what's left of yesterday's bread. You boil a pot of water with old herbs in it, part tea, part memory. You sit by the fire until the sun begins to dip. Then you prepare. No uniform, no axe, just gloves, rope, and the silence you wear like a second skin. You meet the cart outside the priory, just as the first stars begin to prick through the sky. It's unmarked. No driver you recognize, a covered bundle in the back. No questions. You carry it in. The priory door creaks open, and a young monk leads you through a narrow passage to a small chamber lit with only one candle. There, on the table, is the body. You've seen death, but this one looks quiet, almost staged. The monk says, no rites, no tomb, just earth, deep. You do as asked. You carry the body out under cover of dusk. You dig in a plot that's been used for pigs before. You bury it deeper than needed. You pack the earth with both hands. You don't speak. You're given a pouch of coin. Heavy. Too heavy. You go home. Wash your hands. Scrub under your nails. You sit by the fire again and stare at the flame until it starts to sway. You write. Buried something that wasn't supposed to be dead or wasn't supposed to be found. I didn't ask. They didn't explain. The fire is very quiet tonight. You set down the pen. You open the window a crack. The wind carries in the smell of cold leaves and turned soil. You breathe it in, and then you sleep, because whatever you did today, you wake to the sound of someone knocking, not urgent, not timid. 3 measured taps. Then silence. You sit up slowly. It's not the kind of knock that announces news. It's the kind that suggests someone outside already knows what you'll say. You pull on your cloak, fasten the pin, check the blade. Still wrapped, still resting. The door creaks as you open it. It's the sheriff's clerk. Small man. Always smells faintly of wet ink and dried lavender. Probably keeps herbs in his sleeves. Probably can't sleep without the sound of scratching quills. He bows his head slightly, eyes avoiding yours. The sheriff requests your presence, he says. There's been a situation. You don't ask what kind. You simply nod. The clerk hands you a folded writ. It bears the sheriff's seal and a single name, Reynold Brain. You blink. You've heard the name before. He's not a thief, not a heretic, not a man of hunger or vengeance or accident. He's a lord's son. Mainstream historical fact. Nobles were rarely executed publicly unless they threatened the crown or embarrassed the wrong person. Even then, care was taken. It required formal writs, sealed judgments, private scaffolds, and sometimes reluctant executioners. You saddle your mare slowly, hands shaking more than usual. You haven't been summoned to the keep in over a year. The last time, there were candles, robes, Latin you only half understood. You ride the path slowly, rain-soft ground rising in puffs of mist beneath your horse's hooves. Trees close in overhead. Even the birds are quiet. The keep looms like it's always watching. At the gate, the guard lets you in without question. Inside, torches flicker along the stone walls. You're led to a narrow chamber with too many shadows and not enough warmth. The sheriff stands near a table, a goblet in hand, his face pinched like he's been chewing secrets. He confessed, he says, before you even sit. Strangled a maid. No denying it. His father, has agreed to the sentence. You ask, public. He shakes his head. Private. Discreet. Mourning. You nod. Because what else do you do? Quirky tidbit. Private executions of nobility were often handled behind abbey walls or within the tower. The executioner might be brought in secretly, often under guard, and expected to swear silence. Payment was generous. The discomfort was permanent. You sleep in the keep that night. A servant brings bread and wine. You eat alone. You reread the writ. Reynold Brain. You remember him. Just a glimpse years ago. He rode through the village during a feast day. Wore green velvet and a feathered hat. Tossed coins to the children like he was made of gold. You never liked him. At dawn, they bring him to the courtyard. There's no block, just a simple bench and 2 guards standing too far back to be useful. He doesn't speak. He kneels. His hair is damp with dew. You unwrap the blade. You glance at the priest who gives a nod without a word. You raise your arms. You bring them down. And it's done. No crowd. No gasp. Just one bird crying in the distance. Late to morning. You wrap the blade again, careful. You wash your hands in a bucket behind the stables. You throw the water into the dirt and watch it vanish. You receive your payment in a pouch sealed with wax. You're told nothing else. You ride home under a sky that can't decide between rain and regret. You pass the same trees, the same village, the same children who don't look up when you pass. At home, you sit by the fire. The blade rests near your feet. You write. Sometimes the work is quieter when it's important, and sometimes that quiet is louder than the crowd ever was. You don't finish the sentence. You stare at the flame until it dies. Then you lie down and sleep without dreams, because tonight the silence is too full to hold anything else. You wake later than usual. No knock, no writ, no list slipped under the door. Just sunlight creeping in through the shutter. Dust dancing in the bean like it's got nowhere else to be. You watch it for a while. It moves slowly, like a feather floating down a well. Your joints ache. Your shoulders are sore, not from swinging the blade, but from how still you were trying to be yesterday. You sit up. The air in the room is heavy with the smell of oiled wood and something faintly metallic. You don't reach for the axe this time. You know it's there. You just let it be. You dress slowly. Pull on your boots with a grunt and a curse. Splash your face with water that's not quite cold enough to jolt you awake. Then you just sit. Nothing on the calendar. No names. No errands. No couriers with pursed lips and too many words they don't want to say. So you clean the hearth, mostly. You scrub the ash away, sweep the corners, restack the firewood. You rehang the curtain. You fix the hinge that always creaks, even if you've grown fond of its warning sound. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners often had more downtime than legend suggests. A small-town hangman might go weeks without an official job. Some supplemented their income by working as tanners, knackers, even rat catchers. Few of these trades improved their reputation. You leave the house before noon and walk the long path toward the river. Not for anything urgent, just to move. Along the way, you see a merchant trying to free his cart from a patch of sticky mud. He sees you, hesitates, then gestures for help. You push. The wheel groans, you grunt. Together you heave it forward. He thanks you, quietly, then hands you a small loaf wrapped in cloth. It's oat and apple, he says. Better warm, but still decent. You nod, then keep walking. You reach the river and sit under the same old, older tree that's been slanting toward the bank since you were too young to carry a blade. The water moves slow today, lazy, clouded from yesterday's rain. You unwrap the loaf and eat it slowly, bite by bite, watching geese drift downstream like monks on holiday. A child's laughter echoes from somewhere upriver. You flinch at first, then listen. They're playing heads and halos, a chasing game. One child is the executioner, the other the saint. You lie back against the tree and stare up through the leaves. Quirky tidbit. Many Tudor-era children turned public events into games. Executions, royal visits, Even plague outbreaks were reimagined through rhyme and chase and song. Historians still argue whether this was morbid, innocent, or the only way children could make sense of the world around them. You doze a little. The ground is soft, the breeze steady. You dream of nothing, just the sound of boots on gravel, the weight of the axe, the way a neck feels tense beneath a prayer. You wake before the sun dips. Back in town, the streets are quieter than usual. Maybe it's the weather. Maybe it's you. You pass the baker. She nods. Barely. You pass the blacksmith. He pretends not to see you. You smile, because you've learned that's easier than frowning. At home, you light the fire. Warm a bit of broth. Write in your diary. No names today. No bells. Just geese and bread. And an old tree that still remembers how to lean. You put the pen down. You let the candle burn longer than needed. And when you sleep, your fingers are still stained with river mud. You wake to the sound of hammering, rhythmic, steady, and very much too early. Someone's fixing a door, or breaking one. Either way, you decide not to investigate until you've had something warm in your stomach. You stir the hearth. The coals are stubborn this morning. You feed them bark curls and breath until they agree to glow. You place the kettle just so, balancing it on the edge like always. It wobbles, then settles. Outside, the hammering continues. You pull on your cloak, grab the ledger, and open the door. The blacksmith's apprentice is working on the chapel steps repairing a warped hinge. By the look of it, the priest must have finally complained, or the door started speaking Latin every time it squeaked. You nod as you pass. The apprentice pauses just long enough to wipe his brow, then gets back to work. You head to the square. It's market day. Bright cloth strung between posts, baskets of onions, barrels of salted fish, a woman shouting about gooseberries with the urgency of a town crier announcing the king's death. It's oddly cheerful. You don't belong here, but you go anyway. You stop at the apothecary's stall. He eyes you with polite disinterest. No names today, he asks. You shake your head. He shrugs. Then buy something, or at least block the wind somewhere else. You select a small tin of clove salve for your hands, cracked from rope and cold and guilt. You drop 2 coins, take the tin, and walk on. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners weren't banned from markets, but they were rarely welcomed. Vendors would accept their coin, then scrub the tables. Some customers walked away rather than share the space. It was said that proximity brought misfortune, or worse, remembrance. You buy a small pouch of dried pears. The vendor doesn't make eye contact. Back home, you sit by the fire and rub the salve into your palms. It burns, then cools. You write in your ledger. Market was loud. Bought pears. Hands hurt. Still here. You stop. Draw a small pear in the margin. It's lopsided. You leave it anyway. In the afternoon, a knock. Not from the sheriff. Not from the clerk. It's the almoner. He carries a satchel and a question. There's a girl, he says. Young, 13 maybe. Says her father's missing. Was supposed to be executed last week. Names not on your list. You frown. No such name in your records. You ask where she is. Behind the chapel, waiting. You find her sitting in the shade, hugging her knees, cloak too big for her frame. You kneel beside her. She doesn't flinch. You ask the name. She gives it. Willem Gray. You blink. You buried Willem Gray a month ago. No trial. No announcement. He was delivered in a cart after sunset, wrapped in coarse cloth. No questions allowed. You weren't told he had a daughter. You weren't told anything at all. Quirky tidbit. Some Tudor executions, especially for political dissidents or inconvenient voices, were done off the books, quietly. No public spectacle. No records. Just a name whispered, a body buried, and a family left to guess. Historians still debate how many such deaths were unrecorded. You tell her gently that her father won't be coming back. She doesn't cry, just nods, and says, "I thought so." You sit with her for a while, say nothing more. At dusk, you walk her home, or to the house she's staying in. Her aunt, maybe, or just someone kind enough to take her in. You hand her the pouch of dried pears. She takes it, mumbles thanks. You return home with a chill you didn't earn from the wind. You write in your diary. Some names never reach the list, and some voices still ring, even when no bell is rung. You stare at the page a long time, then close the book, and let the fire go out. You wake before the sun, not because of a sound this time, but because of the quiet, that kind of heavy stillness that settles on a place just before something begins or ends. You lie there for a moment, eyes open, watching shadows shift on the ceiling. The air feels cooler today, but not cold, just cautious. You rise, dress slowly, and light the fire with the last of the kindling. It catches without complaint. For once, the flame doesn't sputter. You boil water. Sip it plain. You're not hungry yet, and the bread from yesterday is more defense than food now. You check the blade. Still clean. Still sharp. Still waiting. Then you hear it. The bell. Not the chapel bell. The town bell. Twice. Paused. Then twice again. You know that rhythm. Summons from the sheriff. It means someone new has arrived, and they've brought trouble with them. You grab your cloak. You don't bring the axe. Not yet. At the square, a crowd is already forming. Tight, quiet, urgent. You push through gently. You don't need to say anything. People step aside for you, always. There's a wagon, and in the wagon, 2 prisoners, bound, hooded, not local. The sheriff sees you and nods. His eyes say what his words do not. This wasn't planned. This wasn't requested. This was delivered. Mainstream historical fact. From time to time, central authorities, royal, religious, or otherwise, would transfer condemned prisoners between towns. These were often political dissidents, rebels, or troublesome thinkers. Their deaths needed to be witnessed, but not necessarily honored. Executioners were expected to oblige, regardless of notice. The sheriff says only, orders from London, sent ahead last week, delayed by the storm. You didn't get the letter. He hands you the writ. Still damp from travel. The ink has blurred. The names are difficult to make out, but one catches your eye. Marjorie Wren. A woman. You blink. Look up at the wagon again. Try to guess which hooded figure it is. You fail. The execution is scheduled for tomorrow. First light. You go home. You prepare. You sharpen the blade. You replace the leather on the grip. You scrub the bench by the window. You write the names in your ledger, even if you can't spell them perfectly. You draw a small wren beside the second. You go back to the square near dusk. The prisoners are being held in the chapel cellar. You ask the priest for permission to speak with them. He hesitates, then relents. You step down into the earth-chilled dark. The air smells like damp linen and prayer that's gone stale. You kneel beside the woman first. She looks at you, steady, her eyes sharp. Awake. She says, "I thought you'd be taller." You smile despite yourself. You ask if she has any requests. She says, "Face east. I want to see the sun. I haven't seen it in 3 weeks." You nod. She asks your name. You pause, then give it. She repeats it once, then closes her eyes. Quirky tidbit. In rare cases, prisoners developed a rapport with their executioner, especially when their death had little to do with guilt and everything to do with message. Some requested songs, others told jokes. There are stories of condemned prisoners comforting the man with the axe. Historians still argue who offered whom mercy. You return home in the dark. You boil a bit of water, drop in a sliver of time. You don't eat. You don't sleep. You sit beside the fire and write. Marjorie Wren. East facing. Not afraid. Wanted her name to matter more than her crime. You underline it. Once. And when the candle burns low, you blow it out with care, and listen to the silence gather around you like wall. You wake long before the first bell. You don't light a candle. You don't speak. You just move, quietly, slowly, as if noise might undo the day before it begins. You dress with practiced hands. Tunic, cloak, gloves. The blade, wrapped and cradled in the crook of your arm, feels heavier today. Or maybe you're just paying more attention. Outside, the sky is a dark indigo bruise, just beginning to blush at the edges. The air is cold and damp. A stillness hangs over the town like fog that hasn't found the ground yet. You walk the path alone. No escort. No curious onlookers. Just the sound of your own boots on stone. At the chapel gate, the priest is waiting. He doesn't speak either. He nods, unlocks the door, and leads you down into the cellar. They're both already awake. The man is pacing, murmuring to himself, too softly to hear. Marjorie Wren sits with her back to the wall, knees drawn up, hands folded loosely. She sees you first. East? She asks. You nod. They'll bring me out. You nod again. She exhales. Thank you. No one asks for a prayer. The priest offers one anyway. Quiet. A string of words that cling to the walls like mist. You don't follow it. You've heard too many versions to pick one. Mainstream historical fact. Many executions at dawn were chosen not for discretion, but for atmosphere. The light, the silence, the gravity of morning lent a kind of weight to the act. Executions at first light became a theatrical tradition, less for the condemned and more for those who had to witness, write, or retell. They bind her hands gently. No struggle. You follow them up the stone steps, blade tucked beneath your arm, heart oddly steady. The scaffold has been moved to the eastern field. Easier to face the sunrise there. You reach it before the sun crests. You place the block. Unfold the cloth. Check the wood for splinters. You don't need to, but you do. They bring her forward. No blindfold. The man follows, 2 steps behind, muttering still. Marjorie kneels. She looks toward the horizon, where light is beginning to pour over the ridge in slow, gold ribbons. You ask if she's ready. She nods, and then says, "You can write about me if you like, but don't make it a tragedy." You blink. She adds, "Just say I remembered the sun." You grip the axe tighter. She bows her head. You raise the blade. You bring it down, and when it's done, you step back, heart thudding like a hammer dropped on stone. No crowd, no applause, just the wind picking up, shaking the grass. The man follows quietly. His turn comes next. You don't speak. He doesn't ask. It's over quickly. By mid-morning, you've cleaned the axe, folded the cloth, recorded both names in your ledger. You draw a sun beside Marjorie's. Quirky tidbit. Some condemned prisoners left behind tokens, notes, flowers, poems, or asked the executioner to carry final words to loved ones. Many of these messages never made it to their destination. Others were preserved, anonymously, in journals, sermons, or local tales. Historians still debate which words were truly theirs, and which were shaped for storytelling. You bury the blade in oil for the night. It's earned it. You boil tea with dried apple. Eat a crust of bread without tasting it. The day fades slowly. You sit in the doorway and watch children chase each other through the lane. None of them glance your way. You don't mind. At twilight, you open your diary and write 2 names, 1 sunrise. No shame. You pause. Then you add, "She asked not to be mourned, only remembered." You close the book. Let the fire crackle down to embers, and sleep without dreams, because sometimes it's enough just to remember the sun. You wake to birdsong, insistent, high-pitched, and entirely too optimistic. It startles you briefly, not because it's loud, but because it's rare. You haven't heard morning birds like this in weeks. You sit up, rubbing the stiffness from your neck, and blink at the sliver of sun pushing through the shutter. The fire's long gone out. The room smells faintly of soot and leather and something vaguely herbal. You left the salve open again. There's no name waiting for you today. No writ. No knock. Just birds, sunlight, and a hearth that's asking politely to be swept. So you sweep it. Then you sharpen the blade, not because it's needed, but because your hands ask for it. You found the movement steadies your breath, more than prayer ever did. You oil the leather of the grip. You realign the buckle on your traveling pouch. You trim the loose threads from the edge of your cloak. It's a quiet morning, which usually means the afternoon won't be. You step outside. The cobbles are still wet from last night's rain, but there's warmth behind it now, the kind that makes window boxes bloom and chickens lay eggs with brighter shells. A boy runs past, shouting about a found sheep. Two merchants argue over who gets to stand closer to the well. You nod to the almoner. He's carrying a basket today. He offers you a beetroot. You accept it like it's an honor. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners were occasionally given gifts by sympathetic townsfolk, quiet gestures to soften the social distance. A loaf of bread, a pinch of salt, an extra log for the fire. These weren't acts of celebration, but recognition. The job was grim. The person wasn't always. You eat the beetroot raw, wiping the juice with your sleeve. In the market square, you spot something new. A man in a long brown cloak, standing still, watching the scaffold. He isn't looking at the carpentry. He's looking at the stain on the wood. You approach slowly, saying nothing. He speaks first. It's lower than I imagined. You nod. He turns to you. You're the one. You nod again. He doesn't introduce himself, just says, "My brother stood there last winter. I wanted to see it." You wait, then ask gently, "Did you want a different story?" He shakes his head. "No, just this one." Then he turns and walks away. You don't follow. Quirky tidbit. Some relatives of the condemned visited execution sites days, weeks, even months later. Some placed flowers. Some left notes. Others simply stood in silence. There are parish records of townspeople finding carved initials on scaffolds, worn into wood that couldn't answer back. Historians still argue whether these marks were remembrance or protest. You return home mid-afternoon. The frogs are louder in the marsh today. The chapel bells ring for a wedding. Not yours, obviously, but someone who still believes in ceremony. You sit on your steps and watch the procession pass. Flowers, smiles, a girl clutching her cousin's hand, like she's afraid to float away. You remember Marjorie's face. You don't try to forget it. Later, you write in your diary, "A man came to look at the place his brother died. Didn't want anything. Didn't ask anything. Just looked." You draw a beetroot in the corner. You laugh at yourself. Then you close the book. The fire crackles softly beside you, and the birds are still singing. You wake to thunder rumbling somewhere far off, low and long, and not quite ready to arrive. You stretch beneath the blanket, bones popping like floorboards, and let the sound pass through you. There's no hurry in it, just a reminder that the sky still knows how to grumble. The room is warm. The fire didn't die entirely overnight. You offer it a stick, a breath, and a second chance. No knocks, no summons. You open the ledger anyway. Still no names, but someone's written something on the corner of the last page. Small, light, almost a joke. The blade sleeps too. You stare at it for a long time. You don't recognize the handwriting. Mainstream historical fact. Executioners were often the subjects of minor pranks. or folk rituals. Children would leave drawings. Townsfolk would chalk superstitions on doors or tools. Some believed the axe had to rest between jobs to avoid becoming blood-hungry. Others just liked unsettling the man who carried it. You tear out the corner and toss it into the fire. The flames curl around it. Slow and casual, you decide to visit the graveyard. Not for a name, for the silence. You walk there with a hood up. Not for weather, but privacy. The path is muddy. The stone markers lean like old men, resting on elbows. Moss covers names that no one has spoken in decades. You pause at the walnut tree, the one you buried the spare blade beneath. Still here, still unbothered. You place your hand on the trunk and close your eyes. You think about all the weight you've set into this ground, and all the names that never made the list. On the way home, you stop at the tailor's shop. He doesn't speak to you unless you order cloth. Today you do. Something simple, unmarked, a darker thread than usual. He nods, measures quickly, then returns to pretending you don't exist. You leave a few coins on the counter. Outside, the thunder returns, closer now, still not urgent. You walk home slow, enjoying the rare sense of nothing demanding your time, until you arrive, because someone's waiting by your door. Your apprentice. You forgot his face a little. It's thinner now, older. He holds his pack like he's not sure if you'll open the door or the blade. You unlock it. Step aside. He enters without speaking, sits by the hearth, waits. Eventually, you ask, "Why now?" He shrugs. "I miss the quiet." That's not true, but it's kind. You hand him a bowl. He eats without comment. Quirky tidbit. Executioners often took in apprentices not to teach, but to talk, to hand down the rhythm of the craft, to give shape to the unspoken rules, how to grip the haft, how to stand, how to see someone and still do what needs doing. Many apprentices never made it through the first job. Later, you show him how to oil the blade. He already knows. Later still, you hand him the ledger. He reads a few lines, then closes it. He asks, "Is it harder now than before?" You say, "No, just heavier." You both nod like that answers everything. It does. You write in your diary, "The boy came back, taller, quieter, good hands. We'll see what they carry." You don't sign it. You never do. Outside, the thunder finally breaks into rain. You sit by the fire, both of you silent, and let the storm pass without needing to name it. You wake to the smell of porridge. Oats mostly. A touch of salt. Nothing fancy. But someone stirred it long enough to keep it from burning. You blink toward the hearth. The apprentice is already dressed, spoon in hand, squatting near the fire like he was born there. He nods at you. Quiet. Comfortable. You sit up, stretch your arms overhead, and feel your back argue about yesterday's weather. You grunt. The apprentice doesn't react. Smart lad. You eat together without talking much. Just the scrape of spoons and the soft pop of the fire. It's nice. Ordinary. For a moment, you pretend you run a bakery. Or a mill. Something that deals in flour instead of endings. After breakfast, you teach him how to wrap the axe properly, not just in cloth. In silence, you show him how to fold it so it doesn't clang, how to carry it so it doesn't swing, how to place it in the chest without making the floorboards wince. He listens. He always did. Then you hand him the book. The real one. Not the diary. The black book. The one with the names. He flips through it carefully, eyes scanning pages lined in dates, charges, notes in your handwriting, some formal, some tired, some only halfway true. He stops at a name. Edric Pike. You glance over his shoulder. Missed the block. You say. He nods. Took a second swing. You shake your head. Third. He winces, not from fear, from understanding. Mainstream historical fact. While most executioners aimed for one clean stroke, multiple swings weren't uncommon, especially with dull blades, resistant bone, or nerves. Some recorded cases mention 5 or 6 attempts. Public reaction could vary wildly. Sympathy, disgust, or outright revolt. Historians still debate whether such moments ended careers or forged reputations. You let him keep the book for an hour. He doesn't read aloud. You're grateful. At midday, the sheriff's clerk arrives. Another name. Jocelyn Brandt. You don't recognize it. Accused of theft and slander. You raise an eyebrow. That pairing always means something else. She stole a bishop's letter, the clerk adds. Read it aloud in a tavern. Added some flourishes. You nod slowly. Gallows? He hesitates. She asked for the block. You glance at the apprentice. Time to learn the difference. You say. You spend the afternoon preparing the tools. You check the scaffold. You let the boy handle the rope, the oil, the leather straps. He does fine. He moves like someone who's seen enough, but still wants to see more. You walk the perimeter of the square, pacing out the crowd lines, noting which cart ruts might trip someone mid-spectacle. That night, you can't sleep. The fire is too loud. You lie on your cot, eyes open, listening to the apprentice snore, soft, uneven, like he's trying to forget his own thoughts. You write in your diary. New name, new hands. Tomorrow we'll test them both. The girl chose the block. I wonder if it was defiance or design. You underline it twice. In the morning, the square is already stirring. You dress slowly, carefully. You wrap the blade yourself. The boy watches. He doesn't offer to help. Good. The platform is solid. The air is cold, but not biting. You stand ready. The crowd is thinner than usual. Maybe it's the wind. Maybe it's the name. They bring Jocelyn forward. She's young. Red hair braided back, a split lip healing at the corner. She walks like someone who knows this isn't the worst thing that's ever happened to her. She doesn't ask for a blindfold. She kneels. You look at the apprentice. He nods. You raise the axe. You swing. Clean. Afterward, you let the boy clean the blade. He does it carefully. Not reverently, just right. Quirky tidbit. Executioners often taught their apprentices through quiet observation. No lectures. No tests. Just task after task, until the line between teacher and tool blurred. The first real test was always the first real swing. But the second test came later, when they wrote the name in ink. Back home, the boy enters the ledger. Jocelyn Brandt. Sharp tongue. Still breath. No shame. You don't correct him. You just nod and let the fire burn a little longer than usual. You wake to bells. Not the chapel, not the town, but the tower near the river. The one they only ring when someone important dies. You sit up slowly, waiting for the second chime. It comes deeper than the first, with the kind of echo that hangs in the air like smoke. You count a third, then nothing. You look over. The apprentice is already awake, already dressed. He doesn't ask. He doesn't have to. Someone noble has died, which means you're working today. You rinse your face, smooth your tunic, and wrap the blade without thinking. The motions are familiar now, not comfortable, but muscle deep. Like tying boots, like breathing. You take the long path around the square, avoiding the usual stairs. But today, something's different. People aren't looking away. They're watching. Faces alert. Curious. No smiles. At the sheriff's office, the clerk hands you the writ. He doesn't meet your eye. The name at the top is bold. Clear. Sir Elric Hale. Knight. Former courtier. Accused of treason. Maybe something worse. The papers don't say. Or they've been rewritten too many times. He's to be executed in the square, not the scaffold. The ground. At sunset. Mainstream historical fact. High-ranking nobles were sometimes executed without a platform, kneeling directly on cloth or straw, symbolizing both humility and haste. Their bodies were often taken away instantly, buried privately. Crowds were controlled. Clergy were optional. The performance was pared back to its sharpest edge. You prepare with the boy. You test the blade 3 times. You oil the grip. You measure the distance from elbow to drop, 3 paces. You mark the spot with chalk. You boil water, but don't drink it. You don't write in the diary. Not yet. At dusk, the sky is orange, flickering toward red. The square fills slowly, quietly. More guards than usual. More silence, too. Sir Elric arrives on foot, escorted by men who used to follow him, now walking 1 pace behind like shadows in morning. He's clean-shaven. He's calm. He kneels without prompting, hands folded in front, like he's praying to a god he doesn't fully trust. He looks up once, meets your eyes, and says, "Make it clean." You nod. You raise the axe. You breathe once, then swing. It lands true. The silence afterward is strange. It doesn't settle. It coils, tight and uncomfortable. The guards move in. They lift the body, cover it, leave with the same quiet haste they arrived with. The crowd disperses. No applause. No gasps, no one speaks. Just footsteps and wind. You clean the blade by torchlight. The boy helps. Neither of you says anything until the cloth comes away clean. Quirky tidbit. Some executioners were known to keep the final words of noblemen in separate books, private, personal collections passed down or destroyed. These were never public, not for fame, just for memory. Historians still argue whether they were records or confessions. Back at home, you finally write in the diary, Sir Elric Hale, sunset, no stage, no sermon, only steel. Then, beneath it, he asked for clean. I gave him what I could. You close the book. Sit by the fire. Let the boy sleep first. You stay up, sharpening the blade one final time before putting it away. Not because it needs it, but because tomorrow is coming, and you'd rather greet it ready. You wake to birds again, not the cheerful kind. These are argumentative. 2 crows on the roof, bickering like old merchants over a bent coin. You lie there a moment, listening to the back and forth rhythm of wing beats and squawks. And then, silence. They fly off. The fire is still warm. The apprentice is gone, probably to fetch water or bread, or one of those quiet morning errands that only exist because someone younger decides to move before you do. You sit up. Everything aches, but not in the usual way. It's not exhaustion, not grief, just use. You stand, stretch, walk to the hearth. The axe is still in its place, but you don't reach for it. Not today. There are no names in the ledger, no letters, no footsteps in the lane, no need for you to oil, wrap, carry, or deliver anything. The blade sleeps, so you let it. You boil water slowly, not for tea, just for the sound of it. Then you take your stool and carry it out into the sunlight. Sit on the edge of your doorway and watch the village unfold. A woman beating rugs over the fence, children dragging a broken cart, wheel like it's a prize. The blacksmith singing again off-key, bold, unashamed. You haven't felt this invisible in years, and it feels good. Mainstream historical fact. Some executioners simply stopped, retired quietly, disappeared, or turned to farming. There were no formal ceremonies, no pensions, no statues, only the quiet absence of their name from the next list. Some were forgotten, others became stories, softened by time. You think about the boy. He hasn't come back yet, but he will, or he won't. Either way, he's ready. You rise, walk to the field outside town, find the walnut tree. It's taller now. You dig slowly, remove the oilskin bundle, your old tools. You carry them back, not to the scaffold, but to the chapel. You speak with the priest. He doesn't interrupt. You hand him the tools. Say only, keep them, or bury them, or don't. He nods. You leave, lighter than before. Quirky tidbit. A few executioners left notes or sealed journals for their successors, scraps of advice, sketches of blocks, names they couldn't forget. Most were lost or burned, but some survived in church basements, tucked into ledgers, unread but carefully kept. At home, you open your diary for the last time. You write, no blade today, no name, just sky and breath, and the sound of birds not arguing. Then, if someone reads this, know it was never easy. but I try to be careful. With every name, with every ending, you underline nothing. You close the book and set it gently on the windowsill. The sun moves slowly across the floorboards. You don't follow it. You just sit, hands quiet, no calluses to deepen, no ledger to fill, just breath. Just now, wind down 300 words. Let the axe rest now. Let the edge fade from your thoughts. Let the crowd drift back to wherever they came from. Let the names fold themselves quietly back into the ledger, one by one. The scaffold is empty. The blade has been cleaned, and the sky is just sky again, wide and soft and indifferent. No one is watching. No one is calling. You are not needed today. Let your breath soften. Let your fingers relax. Let the tension that once lived behind your shoulders melt like candle wax. You don't have to remember the names right now. You don't have to sharpen anything. You don't have to answer for what was done. Just the sound of morning. Just a quiet house. Just the fire, low and friendly. You were never only one thing. You were never just the blade. And whatever happens tomorrow, whether another name appears or the boy takes your place, know this: you survived what others could not bear to watch. You stood still while the world turned. You bore the weight, not because you wanted to, but because someone had to. Now the work is done. Now the page is closed. Now you can sleep. And maybe, in some other village, on some other morning, they will only remember you as the one who always made it quick. End of script. Sweet dreams.